Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Traversing Entrepreneurship podcast, a show for business owners who set out to do something different and did not stop there. This is Derek DeLomo coming to you from Traverse City, Michigan, the city that inspired the name of this show. With 20 years of experience in the financial industry, I've heard my fair share of success as well as horror stories in business. On this podcast, I enjoy sitting down with a variety of entrepreneurs to talk about what it takes to build a successful business and everything that comes along with doing something different and paving your own way in life. In today's episode, I'll be interviewing Rich Kahn, the co-founder and CEO of Anura, proud father of 4 and serial entrepreneur since 1993. Join us today as we discuss his business and his journey in entrepreneurship. Welcome to the show, Rich. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, you and I have talked briefly already, but our listeners, this is the first time they're hearing you. So can you give us a little bit of your backstory, maybe how you got started and what life was like before you started Anura?
The story, right? Just trying to go through it quickly.
Start back in 93. Give us the
Go a little further back than that. I always found computers easy. They came natural to me. I wrote my first game when I was 9 years old. I got published in a magazine when I was 12. Worked my way through college selling. So selling internet, that just seemed like a good fit for me. Fun fact, I was actually accepted to MIT for robotics engineering. Would have been a class of starting in 1990, which when I looked at the technology at the time, it wasn't a whole lot of fun stuff at the time. What they're doing today in robotics is what I wanted to work on, 20 plus years ago, right? But anyway, so started a couple of companies, made some money fast, ran up to this point 3 full processes to try to sell. Just a comedy of errors or comedy of tragedies, I should say, that led them not to be successful, right? But I can't complain. I've always done well. In 2003, we'll take it up to there. My wife and I started an ad network. Think of Google, but small. We ran it for about 20 years at over 100 million in sales in the company, bootstrapped 100%. Tried to sell the company or actually backtrack. In 2003, we launched it. 2004, clients started complaining, hey, traffic quality doesn't seem like it was a month ago, 2 months ago. What's going on? So I looked into it and I'm like, oh, I've seen this before. It's fraud. So I told my partner, look, I don't want to be the person solving fraud. It's a big problem. Let me just go out and license a platform, bolt it on. Let's just focus on our ad network. And in 2004, nothing existed. So either I'm going to lose the company or I'm going to figure this out. I'm a developer, challenge accepted, right? So went ahead, built the product, worked great. All of a sudden, traffic quality spiked up, sales started spiking up, everything was going great. But of course, I had to stay on top of it because fraud evolves. 10 years later, I had clients asking, almost begging for me to use the software outside of our network, because we're one small channel to them and they wanted to use it elsewhere. So we ran a test on somebody, shoehorned it in just to get like proof of concept, and it worked great. It was amazing. They were loving it. So we said, all right, we got to make this in fact, at that point, we ran a full process to sell that company along with the fraud software. And I spoke to all the big boys. I spoke to Google, Facebook, Yahoo, Bing, about a half a dozen other big companies, and they all said the same thing. We don't give a crap about your ad network. It's been done, right? It's too small to be considered. But the fraud solution, the technology you built, that's interesting. 2 questions. Do you have clients behind it, and is it a standalone product? And I had to say no to both. And they all said the same thing. Once you do, call us back. So you start thinking, maybe there's some magic in that fraud technology. So we said, all right, let's spin it up. And in 2017, we launched Anura as a standalone product. And we've been selling that ever since.
And it's been, so I guess, how has the business transitioned from, let's say, 2004 to now?
Well, the company that we had before was an ad network based on a bunch of principles that were a dying breed. Because back then, you had tier 1 traffic sources like a Google, right? Yahoo at the time were considered tier 1. Ask.com, if we all remember them, right?
Ask
We'll
Jeeves.
We can go further back if we need to, but those are the tier 1 platforms that most people bought from, right? And we were considered a tier 2. So alternative, traffic sources. And the problem with the alternative traffic sources, lots of them were latent with fraud, and most of them failed miserably. Didn't last long. We were lasting because we had this fraud solution in place. But again, that model was still dying, and we kept it alive for probably 5 years after we decided it probably didn't make sense to continue running, because we had a lot of clients that were with us for 10, 15 years that were like, we love it. We want to keep buying it. And then you get to that stage where, as a business owner, what's like the number one thing they say? Never have a heavy concentration of your revenue coming from one client, one group of clients. Like, they never should have that. And I remember turning to my partner, and my partner, by the way, is my wife. I said, I just did some numbers, which I usually don't do because I'm focused more on technology. And she goes, what would you come up with? I go, well, 80% of our revenue comes from one client. I go, he ever pulls the plug, we got to shut this thing down. And it felt like 6 months later, we got the call. Yeah, we're transitioning into a different business model. This is not going to be what we're looking for anymore. We need to shut down. So that's when we said, yeah, you know what? We had 20 years, 100 million in sales, very successful business, tried to sell it, wasn't successful. Like, we had a good run, and we spun off this new technology, which was really interesting, for fraud detection in that model. So it was a great business for us, a great stepping stone into Anura. But yeah, that's kind of how it went down. And we've been selling Anura since 2017. When we first started, like we launched this product. We're like, okay, great. I moved a bunch of my employees from the old company to the new company, and I'm like, we're gonna crush this. And I turn to my partner and I go,
We have no
you do
revenue.
realize we have this new company, no revenue, and all this expense. Like, that's not normally how I've done things in the past, but luckily at that point, we as a couple had money made from all these other businesses that we did, so we were able to self-fund it, to get it off the ground, and it only took about 18 months to go profitable. So it wasn't terribly long. But I remember when I first launched it, like, because a lot of entrepreneurs, like, okay, you got this great idea, get this product. We all got to do the same thing. We got to sell
Ideas
it.
don't put food on the table.
Right. If you don't sell it, it doesn't matter how great of a technology it is, you got to sell. So I sat down and I remember, trying to figure out, because I've always been a top salesperson in every company I've ever worked for within 3 months, 4 months. And I'm like, I've never sold SaaS before. It's a very different beast. I've got to figure this out. Like, I didn't have any mentors that could walk me through how to do this. And I was just figuring it out on my own. Thankfully, obviously, we have the internet. So you do some research and stuff. So I did old school technology. I mean, I sat down in my basement every night after work, and I pulled up 100 contacts from LinkedIn, and I sent a personal email to every one of them. I had over 2,000 contacts, and I sat there, and then I responded to them and went back and forth and landed our first couple clients that way. And now you get a few clients and you're like, oh my God, this is really good technology. I'm like, great. Who do you know? Let's start that process.
Yep.
And
There
then
goes
one
the
thing led
spider
to
web.
another, and you start getting into these other scenarios, and it just starts growing.
So how does Anura combat fraud in the ad space?
So right now, let's paint the picture of ad fraud, right? So we just got the numbers in from last year. It's still not finalized, but I'm going to go with this because last year was just 2024. As a global society, we just tipped over $700 billion in digital marketing spend globally. And we're getting in some numbers right now. Their predictions are not finalized yet. It's just taken a while to collect all the data. They're saying it was about 750 billion last year
Okay.
in digital marketing spend. And once I get that final number, I'll sit down and go through and do some math with my developers and find out exactly what we're looking at. But ultimately, we're estimating somewhere between 160 and 170 billion dollars was stolen by fraudsters, right? So before I answer your question, I'm a big Shark Tank fan. Love Shark Tank. I have an idea that eventually I'll do, and maybe I'll apply to Shark Tank just to have some fun, right? Because I got nothing better to do with my time. But anyway, so in Shark Tank, I always love it how a new entrepreneur comes up and they've got this great new idea for baby device or something like that, and they're like, "This is a $3 billion market. I just got to capture a small percentage of it to make some money." And I always see there's a 3 billion, it's 5 billion. This is $160 billion loss to an industry. This is massive. Like, it's hard to fathom those numbers, especially if you watch a lot of politics and they're talking about trillions of dollars here and a couple hundred billion there. Like, you kind of lose sight of how big a billion is, right? And so anyway, it's a big problem. So the question you asked was, how does it work? And don't mind me. I'm a coffee fanatic. I love Dunkin' Donuts. So one of my
We got a special delivery.
staff member just gave me Dunkin' Donuts. So cheers. So anyway, so the basic way it works is you buy traffic from, it doesn't matter where, because you're spending money on paid ads. It could be Google, Facebook, it could be native advertising, email marketing, affiliate marketing, programmatic marketing, wherever. It doesn't matter where you buy the traffic from. Ultimately, that traffic lands on your landing page, on your site that you own. We put a little piece of code on there, more pre-built in the Google Tag Manager, so deployment takes less than 3 minutes. Real simple piece of code. And when a visitor lands on that page, within a second, we can identify if that's a bot, malware, human fraud farm, or a real person. So we know fraud, and again, we define fraud as a bot, malware, human fraud farm. If it's one of those, that audience will not convert legitimately. They will fake conversions. They'll use bogus credit cards. They'll use maybe they'll use Rich Kahn's information to fill out a form to say I want more information on say car insurance or something like that. But it's all bogus, right? We can see that in real time. So I tell my clients, okay, person lands on the site. I now know they're a fraudster. What do you want to do with them? Kick them off, prevent them from filling out a form. Don't let them log into your system. What do you want to do? And we'll design the code to do that for you, and then we'll test to make sure everything works. But we also feed all that information back into our analytics package, which is really cool. We have a lot of depth of data, understanding why it's fraud. In fact, we just had a client. They're like, "Hey, you mind if we take, Claude, the AI tool, and just connect it to your APIs and let it dig through the data and give us some insight?" And we're like, "Yeah, that's what the data's for. I don't care if you're using business tools and a man's person, and you're manually doing it, or you're taking advantage of AI, which you should be, to look at this data at a faster rate. So you can ask simple questions. It could pull the queries and give you some real-time information, build you some dashboards, whatever you need. We have a really cool dashboard that we like, that the majority of our clients like, but some people want something different. So this is what the tools are for. Build it out the way they want. But basically, that little piece of code does everything. We do all the heavy lifting. So get a little more technical without getting too crazy. So a visitor lands on the page, a request is made to our system to say, hey, we want to scan the visitor. We send down a custom collection script that's different every time of the data that we want to collect based on some initial information we collect. We collect all the data, sanitize the data, protect it so it can't be messed with because it's JavaScript. Ship it back, analyze the data, and respond back. This all takes place in about a second or two. And then we give you the answer. It's good or it's bad. What do you want to do?
What normally happens in that scenario? It's bad. What happens?
So let's look at it this way. A lot of companies ultimately lend themselves to doing some lead generation, right? Get somebody to your site. Hey, sign up for my podcast, sign up for my tool, sign up for a demo, sign up for, we have it on our site, sign up for a free traffic quality audit, find out how much fraud you're dealing with, right? So we basically on the page, if we identify them as fraud, don't let the form fill out. Just make that submit button not submittable. Keep it simple. This way it doesn't clog your, because here's what happens. Let's say somebody came along and you were selling a product. Let's just say car insurance. I always pick on car insurance because it's one of the big verticals out there. We have a lot of clients in the space and all that good stuff. So they come along and they say, Rich Kahn, they put my phone number, my email address, whatever else, they hit submit. So they know that a conversion took place. So of course the advertiser's like, great, I got a conversion. Somebody's interested in our product. Let's double check so the first thing they do is a data sanity check to make sure that the information is real. They check to make sure it's not on part of any ban lists that are out there, right? I'm not. And then they say, now I'm going to call Rich. First thing, because it's speed the lead. Everybody wants to get on that phone fast. So they start blowing up my phone. I'm like, I don't know who that is. I don't answer it, right? Now, if I filled out the form myself and my phone starts ringing, I kind of expect that, so I answer the phone. But let's look at a bad lead, right? We talked about a bad lead. So the bad lead comes and starts blowing up my phone. Of course, I don't answer. The average company that buys that lead is calling that lead, from what I've been told, 5 times a day for a week. Then they slow down it, but they keep calling it. They typically will make 50 touches on a lead because in their mind, Rich Kahn was interested in our product and we just need to be able to get him on the phone so we can sell him the product. So after about the 20th dial, I get pissed off and I answer the phone. I'm like, who the hell is this? Oh, this is so-and-so from insurance company. Just calling based on the form you filled out. My response is, where the hell did you get my information? So now what's happening is, first off, you're calling people that are never going to convert, right? Because you pissed them off because they didn't fill out the form. They didn't have interest. Number two, it's creating a brand reputation issue. You dial that phone enough times, people are going to be wondering, where'd you get my information versus what you're trying to sell me. And again, most of these big call centers have, the team, it's a couple people, hitting the phones, or you have, hundreds of people dialing that phone because you got so many leads coming in. You're wasting call center resources because it takes longer to reach somebody who's not expecting your call. One of the big things that people don't talk about is it's a TCPA violation. I didn't give that company written express consent to call me. I can sue them. Sorry about that. I thought I had a do not disturb on my system here.
It's probably your wife calling.
Actually, my mother-in-law.
Yeah. I've
My
got do
second
not
wife.
disturb on, but there's like a few people that can get through it, right? It's my parents, my wife, my mother-in-law, my brother and sister.
Yeah. So I don't know why she's calling, but I will figure that out. So anyway, so it's a TCPA violation. So at that point, you're creating risk for the company, you're wasting time. And then the fifth thing I always talk about is you're a salesperson, you're in a call center, you're supposed to be calling people that have an interest in a product. Imagine 25% of the time, that's about the percentage of fraud we find. People are pissed off, hard to reach, don't want to, where you get any information. So now as a morale as a salesperson, it's down. So when I actually get a real person on the phone who's interested, my
Meh,
morale is down. My selling
meh.
ability is less. I'm not on my A game. So that's kind of so what we can do is stop the person from filling out the form. So it looks like the form is broken. They skip and go on to the next guy.
Yeah, I've got a lead for you when we're done with this.
Um,
Of a company that I engaged, for like call it first quarter of the year. It was one of those kind of set the leads for you. And
yeah.
they fill out the consumer fills out a form, they schedule a meeting. I give them a call, right? I'm going to say 35% of them were
Garbage.
garbage.
Yeah. I'll give you a stat that I haven't told anybody yet because I just saw this. Because again, we drill down and look at individual people, and we're doing hundreds of millions of people a day that we're scanning. But we're looking, our logic is all looking at that individual person. It's which really makes us different. So essentially, when looking at that level, we're seeing. I stepped back this morning actually at a developers meeting, and I'm like, hey guys, look at this. In December, we rolled out a massive update because there's a new AI attack that's out that's got past every fraud solution in the market, including us. It took us a minute to solve that problem. But we were at a trade show in Bangkok, and they were telling us flat out that there was two companies out there that were selling fraudulent traffic that gets around all IVT. It's called IVT vendors, all fraud solutions. So we rolled out an update last year. So this year I want to say, okay, how is fraud looking? Well, the amount of fraud we're catching has doubled since January. I shouldn't say double. It's been up 50% because we were catching, I think it was 26% in January, and last month was 38% of all traffic scanned across all clients, across hundreds of clients, all campaigns.
And how quickly is that like increasing, right? So, I mean, like in 1 year, it
That's
went
the
up
fastest I've
50%.
ever
I
seen
mean,
it. That's the
as
fastest I've ever seen it.
AI continues to proliferate, I mean, you'd think that more and more traffic is going to become fraudulent as kind of the AI, large language models just
Yeah.
continue to blow up.
Well, their AI is making things easier, faster. Because again, bot traffic was always easy to catch. It was back in the day, it was easy to catch because it's robotic, right? The mouse moves perfectly straight. It goes perfectly down. It clicks. Like everything is systematic and it's a pattern that you can build a model around and train and figure out and solve. AI is supposed to look more human. It's getting increasingly. Now we built a new system that we believe is going to keep us ahead of AI for years to come, which is great. But it took a hot minute to build this out. It was a complete revamp of our software. It was a significant upgrade, but this is what we need to move forward.
So going back, like, when you were doing the ad agency, you found the solution, you had to build it, right? How
Yeah.
long, I mean, as somebody who is a complete novice in coding,
Uh-huh.
but who finds it fascinating, right? How long does it take one to build like a fraud solution like Anura?
Okay. Go back to 2004-5 when I wrote my first version. I think I banged it out in a weekend, but I want to say it was under 100 lines of code.
Okay.
Carefully crafted, 100 lines of code, a lot of testing. And, because you build something and it takes more time for testing than it does to actually write the code, right?
Sure.
And it was a very simple process, very simple thing to do. So it didn't take a lot of work. Now I've got a team of about a half a dozen people that have been nonstop working on this for the last 20 years. And every week we roll out one or two new updates because fraud keeps evolving. And, sometimes it's one update, we push an update, sometimes it's multiple updates. It all depends, but it's nonstop updates that are going on. And we've been doing it since 2005 was the first version. And we've been iterating it ever since. So 21 years now. So here's the thing I tell a lot of customers, like, because a lot of customers like, I'm a tech guy, I'm a developer, I can do this. I'm like, yeah, you used to be able to. You can't now. for several reasons. One, in order to find patterns, you need data. So you need a lot of data, because what we're seeing is that this fraudster, it may be just poking a hole at one or two sources here, but when we look at all the sources that we're collecting, it starts to build a pattern that we can see and we can defend against. Well, that's because we have access to hundreds of clients' data. When a client decides they're going to build it themselves, they have access to just their data. So their data. So this is why I actually had a conversation with the head of fraud detection at Google. I met him in, I think in Barcelona. I think we met, I think it was Barcelona, the shop talk.
Okay.
We met him there, and we had a long conversation because we said, we're catching fraud that you guys are missing and blah, blah, we should talk, right? Let's all talk to Google. And he's like, sure. So we're like, great. So we sat down, had a nice conversation. He's got about 1,000 people working for him, all trying to solve the fraud problem. And he goes, my biggest problem is I got too many hands in the cookie jar. Like, one person's working on something, another person works on something else. We start putting the code together and it doesn't work. And
this person puts this patch on, this person puts this
yeah,
patch, invalidates that patch and totally opens up this
too big of a team. He says
Yeah.
you know, it's organized, it's doing well. There's a lot of code running, but he goes, you're catching stuff that we're missing. And he goes, why do you think that's the case? Like, we got a much bigger team than you. And I said, well, first off, we've been doing it longer than you. And second off, we've got data you don't have access to. You only have access to Google data. I have access to Google, Facebook, Yahoo, everybody. And I've been studying it for the last 20 plus years. And that's why I think we're catching stuff you're missing. So again, could somebody build themselves nowadays? It's not worth it. And I always tell people, is it cheaper to build or buy, right? And let's say if someone says, nope, I've got cash in the bank, I want to build my own fraud detection team. Great. You're going to need a couple of high-end developers that really understand this stuff. And there aren't that many of them out there, right? In comparison to the workforce. So you got to dig and you got to find these people wherever they are. And I don't know if any of you have worked with really good developers, getting them to work together, because one is always, they all think they're the smartest guy in the room.
They're all the smartest person in the room. Yeah.
Right. So putting them all together, I've had a knack of dealing with people like that my entire life. So I've been able to get guys like that to work together. And I have a great team. In fact, my chief product officer has been with me for 16 years. I think he said, I got one of my main developers is, I think he just tipped over 17 years. And my CTO has been with me 11 or 12 years. Like, and then we've got some other new people in there too. But the youngest person on the team, I think, is 3 years. Like, they build a cohesive work environment to work together. And that's hard to accommodate, especially when you have like 1,000 people on your team. It's hard to build that. But okay, so now you got to go out and hire a couple of these guys. They're not cheap, right? So a couple 100,000 each. Then you need a data lake, so a place to store all this data where you can summarize it. Then you need processing horsepower. So you got to put all that together. You start adding all this up, you start spending 50, 60, 70 grand a month to build a product I can sell for you for a fraction of the cost. And I have access to more data. I've been doing it a lot longer and I have a proven model. So I always tell people, look, before you step foot and you start doing that, do a sanity check. We call it we do a free traffic quality audit. There's no credit card required. There's no commitment to us. We just want to show you the data. Remember, at heart, I'm a developer. So I want to see if you have a problem that I can solve, right? So you may be having some weird things happening on your data and you're like, I'm not sure if it's great. Let's find out. It takes 3 minutes to deploy. It's free. No requirement. We have literally a one pager, which is a watered down NDA. Sign this, throw the code up, and within a couple of days, we'll know exactly how much fraud you're dealing with. Then you can decide if you need to take advantage of doing something with that. And I'll give you a hint. The answer is yes. I very rarely have I actually caught a company with 7% fraud, which is meaningful on their spend level because they're spending, I think it's like 9 figures a year. Big brand, Fortune 100 company. They're spending a lot of money. And he's like, if you could take me from 7% to 6%, it's a win. Like, they're just looking for incremental wins. Like, they've been doing some good stuff. And he's like, but we're seeing stuff coming. We just don't know. It's too late by the time we need something faster. So we did a quick test and they're like, you're in. Now you got to go through 6 months of procurement. So we're in that procurement phase of trying to get through all the, are you SOC 2 compliant? Are you pen testing checks? Are you GDPR? All the compliancy work that comes with it. But we've already gotten the thumbs up that we're moving forward. It's just a matter of, because all they're looking for is 1 or 2 percentage points to make it a win.
Well, I mean, 1 or 2 percentage points on a bottom line for a company that size.
Yeah, that adds up.
That's real money.
Oh yeah. That's why they say it's a different situation.
So take me back to 2017 when you launched the Standalone product. You're shutting down one company, launching the other one, funding it yourself.
Well, let's backtrack a second. We launched a new company and didn't shut down the other company.
Okay.
So I was thinking I could run both companies. So, but again, we got it down. We got the older company down to a point where, since we weren't trying to grow it, we didn't need a big sales team. We didn't need the marketing team. Like, we had all the stuff there. All we needed was keep an eye on the back end tech to make sure, nothing breaks. If something does break, having somebody who knows the product to fix it. And then customer service and support, which, again, most of these customers were with us. I think the customers were with us for 10 plus years, the ones that were left. So I think it took me an hour a day to manage the whole thing. And I'm like, and it was bringing in some cash positive. So I'm like, yeah, it's worth my time to spend the hour, keep an eye on it, and let that just sit in the side and let it run as long as it needs to run. I think it ran, we launched Anura in 2017. I think we shut it down 6 years later. I mean, it had a good run.
Okay.
I have
So
no
like
complaints.
2023 is when,
Yeah, we made it 20 years.
no kidding.
So it was a good run. We had a great, I mean, we had a good vibe. We had a good show presence. I mean, we did a lot of fun stuff. It was just like that fun company. And it was like, we were spending so much, like, just like little things we were doing. Like, we were spending so much money on our credit card. We had like millions of like Amex points. So whenever we took the sales team to a trade show, it was first class, we took up the whole first class cabin. It'd be 10 or 12 of us. We get first class hotels, the food, because it was all covered by points.
Yep.
So it made it easy. And of course, this company, we don't spend as much on the credit card. A lot of stuff is done differently, and it's a fun company, but it wasn't like, it wasn't there.
It's not the heyday of like the old school drug companies, what like let's see, there was a doc up here. Drug was it? I want to say it was like Viagra or something, when it first came out.
Right.
Who was Viagra? Was that Pfizer? I think they bought him a Viper. Or he won a Dodge Viper for his amount of prescriptions that he wrote of Viagra or whatever it was.
Right. There's a movie on that.
Yeah, things have changed. Things have changed. But so, you're juggling two companies. So I guess, you mentioned early on that the original company was dying, right? So it was, or the model was dying. What in your mind, what were the cues that you saw that, hey, this is dying and it's going away and I need to transition to something else?
Well, we didn't know that when we were spinning off Anora into its own company. Like, we didn't see it
Okay.
there, but because in the very beginning, once we did launch the company, we still were going to trade shows, doing a lot of marketing. And I sat back and I said, not for nothing, but the last 2 years, we haven't added a single new client. We're spending all this money on digital marketing and salaries and salespeople, and we're just not adding anything. Like, what's going on? So I started doing research and realizing that people were opting for more tier one sources of traffic, just not to have to deal with the headache, not knowing that we had good, clean traffic. But they were just like, I'm getting all the traffic I need from Facebook and Google and all these other places. And I don't have to chance it with, a company that I'm not familiar with. Cause again, it was a small company. But, I mean, we had a statistic that came out at one point that 5% of the internet's traffic went through our network at one point, because we had, I think at one point, something like 5 billion searches a day going on our network. It was massive.
That's huge.
It was huge. It
So
was,
for reference, what is Google at that point when that statistic was coming out?
I don't remember, but if you're familiar with a company called SimilarWeb,
No.
they give like stats on different companies. And I remember them sending their salesperson calling me up. Oh, you want to get our data, hey, by the way, and they try to give you like some insights of what they can see. And it's like, we noticed that you own Zanga.com was the name of the company. And 5% of the world's traffic, goes through your network. And I'm like, because we had access to, I want to say at our heyday, we had access to over 300,000 blogs. We're putting our code, our advertising code on their pages so they can monetize their blogs. And that's how we got our traffic. So you'd get these obscure blogs, they'd pop the code up there, and we were set up in an automated fashion. So if you had 10 visitors a month or you had 1 million visitors a month, it didn't matter to us. Put the code on there, whatever traffic you send, we filter it out. Whatever's clean, we sell to our clients. And that was the business model. So at one point we had over 300,000 blogs. This was 15 years ago, I think, is when we hit that mile mark. And I didn't even know about it. It was just some third party company said, hey, 5% of the traffic flows to your network. I'm like, really? And they had statistics on whether it was true or not. I like the statistics, so I'll hang on to it. I'll take the
Absolutely.
win.
It's a great story. It hasn't been disproven, let's put it that way.
Yeah. I'm just going to run with it.
As you shut the original company down in 23, right?
Yeah.
So, you're now focused on just Anura. What's kind of your favorite part about running the business nowadays?
So, and it's kind of like the last company, like when you get a client on board and they fall in love with the technology. So again, the other one was traffic. This is more technology. So you get that feeling like, I'll give you an example. I had a client was courting them for years. We hung out in the same trade shows. One of their people was on the same board as I was. And I'm like, dude, you got to use us, like, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, yeah, like just another product. People get product burn. Like, I just don't want to buy another product and have another process to look for and blah, blah, blah. And then I kept on, I do my normal outreach, ping them once every quarter and say, hey, how's things going? Just want to be top of mind. It's kind of why I do these podcasts when, people see me and hear about me. And the next thing could be a year from now. You know what? I know who I got to call.
Yep.
Let me get a traffic quality audit and find out what's going on. So he calls me up. I email him. He's like, this is perfect timing. We just lost two big clients, and they told us it was because of our traffic quality. And he goes, I know you offer a traffic quality audit. Let's figure it. Let me audit my traffic quality because I need a third party insight to know what's going on because I'm hearing rumbles from the sales team that they're not the only two. So what's going on? And they're getting nervous. So we scanned their network. They had 65% fraud. I said, I'm surprised you're not out of business.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, what can we do? What can we do? I'm like, well, our normal game plan when we first bring on a client, because we want to address it, we don't want to knock out good stuff. We want to knock out the bad stuff, is to cut your fraud in half in the first 90 days. So if I can do that, is that a win for you? Yeah. Oh, absolutely. If you can get us to 30%, we were actually able to do it in 5 weeks because it was some low
Okay.
hanging fruit, some easy wins where we took them, got them under 30% really quick. And then this is how we cement a client relationship. Their clients called them up and said, hey, what are you doing? Traffic quality just spiked. Increase my budget. Locked them in. And then I want to say a couple years later, I ran into one of I think it was the VP of sales, and she comes up to me. She says, oh my God, you guys are from Anura. Oh, you have no idea. You saved our company.
Is this the
That's what I love.
65% company?
Yeah. That's what I love about what I do is because when someone actually sees the technology and it's just not numbers on a dashboard, but when you follow our advice and you feel the difference, you see the ROAS increase, you see ROI go up, you see your clients spend more money. We have client story after client story did just that. That's what I look forward to every day is getting those stories in from people. We have a trade show where we have a high concentration of clients because we've been doing that trade show since 2017 when we first launched. It was the first trade show we did. We've been doing it every year. So we do a client appreciation dinner at that show. And this year we had like 50 people come to the dinner. We have it at this Golden Steer. It's the oldest steakhouse in Vegas. We used to be an old mobster hangout. And it's like, you talk to people, it's like, oh my God, I've heard things about it. It's like 6 months to get in there. And we already got their biggest room reserved. And we just bring everybody down and then people just start telling us about the stories of how great the software is, what it's been doing for them. And then we just sit there, we drink, we eat food, and we just have a good time and just, appreciate the clients because without them, we wouldn't be here. Remember, it doesn't matter how great the software is. If you don't have clients behind it, it doesn't do anything.
Idea doesn't put food on the table. So flip it around. You've taken now Anura from a bolt-on, call it a bolt-on thing that you built for something else to a standalone software SaaS that you are actively selling standalone. Pretty different business model than you were running before.
Yeah. Because it's an edge. I know where you're going with this. It's the educational side of things that make it tough because like in the last company, we're selling traffic and everyone
Right.
was like, most people have some type of testing budget to test new sources, especially when they hear from their friends, we got great traffic and it works great and it's cheap. Hey, I'll give it a shot. Here's $1,000. Show me what you can do with $1,000. You prove it. Next thing you know, they're spending 6 figures with you. This is a very different brand because right now we're going to trade shows where we're coming across major brands. And 50% of them are like, oh, I didn't even know a solution like you existed, let alone the problem. And so we try to explain to them, it's like, look, you're trying to hit a moving target. Like you're looking at your campaign, you're trying to optimize the campaign, making good decisions, but you're making it based on bad data.
Yeah.
If 25% of your data is fraud, I'll give you an example. We had a client, unbeknownst to us, big school, educational. They do a lot of spending on driving in new students and through their portal and all that stuff. And unbeknownst to us, they had a marketing agency and they were suspecting something wasn't going right. So they said, hey, we want you to come in and audit our traffic. And we audited their traffic. They fell in love with the software. They light it up. And now they put us on the phone with their agency for the first time. We're like, oh, we didn't know they had an agency. So they have sources of traffic and they're all broken down in our dashboard. So we know they're coming from Google, Facebook, and a major programmatic company that I won't mention names on yet. And they were 93% fraud, 94% fraud. And they're
Oh,
like, how is that? I said, well, first off, that source, we test them all the time. We usually get around 50%. I've never seen it at 90%, but the agency had their own account that they were managing for a lot of different clients. And I said, what it sounds like is the KPIs that they were managing to, fraud was beating. So they actually started managing to get more and more fraudulent traffic because the KPIs were being faked.
the
And
KPIs
now,
were improving, but they
yeah.
were fake.
So I go, so the client, our client says to us, what should we do? I said, tell them to stop, either one of two things, either get a new fresh account and start from fresh and use our data to optimize and you'll see the difference. Or for right now, as a quick test, just to prove that our data is right, because the agency is like, what are you talking about? We have great traffic. We have this. We're buying from publicly traded companies. They're really good. They're tier one, suppliers. And we're like, it doesn't matter. It's bullshit traffic. Here's the proof. And we can show them the proof. I said, tell you what, let's just turn that source off and move that budget to the other campaigns for 1 month. And let's see what happens. And ROIs all went up. ROAS went up. And they're like, see, because that other traffic really didn't convert. The KPIs we're managing to were not real. That's, again, it goes back to, this is what I enjoy, because when you get a client online, and I just spoke to a client this morning, came from a referral. One of our clients referred us another client. Third of our business comes from referrals. And he said that he spends a couple $100 million a month in marketing. No, a couple $100 million a year. I'm sorry, a couple $100 million a year in marketing.
100 million a month.
And he
You're spending
manages,
millions in advertising.
yeah, and he's managing hundreds of clients. He told me where his sources were, and he's like, I'm curious. Like, I know of the problem. I'm not doing anything about it, but if I can find out if I have a fraud problem and I solve that, that makes my ROI for my clients go up. My clients start spending more money with me. I make more money. So let's run the test. Just show me the traffic quality audit, see if we have a problem that you can solve, and let's go there. And it's that simple. For us, it's a big educational sell because people have to understand what the product is. So for me, it's like, and I hate to say this, but it's like the old, 50s, they used to sell the vacuum cleaners, right? They would come in the house, vacuum, say, tell you what, I'm going to leave this here for 24 hours. I'll come back tomorrow and pick it up. And then they come back and they're like, no, we're going to keep the vacuum because it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's kind
Yep.
of the same thing. Once people can see the data, and I'll give you an example, another example. I had a client that was with us, left us to go to another vendor, most likely because they were a little bit cheaper, like 10 or 15% cheaper. And I'm like, we're not the most expensive. We're not the cheapest. We're fairly priced for what we do. And we put a lot of human resources. So it's just not a SaaS product, like take it off the shelf and run with it, where it's got a low cost to operate. We put a lot of human resources into everything we do. So especially R&D is a huge expense for us. Always trying to stay on top of the fraud. So anyway, he's with them. And so we roll out our new update late last year. So we put a big press release out on it. So I sent to the press release and said, oh, by the way, is your current fraud solution stopping this new AI fraud that's out? He responds back like 3 weeks later. He's like, funny you should talk. I think we need to talk again. So he goes, obviously we're starting to notice some complaints. We're getting some grumbles, even though we're using this other solution. Can we run another audit and see where we are? Run the audit. Like 3 days into the audit, he goes, why are you catching so much more fraud than everybody else? And I go, what do you mean everybody else? He goes, well, we're testing the vendor that we were using, 2 other vendors, and yourself. So we're testing right now 4 vendors, and you're heads and shoulders above these other vendors as far as what you're catching. They're not catching anywhere near this. So the first request was, here's a source. What's wrong with it? Because they're not catching anything on it. And we ran a quick report. I'm like, dude, this is all Google proxy traffic. I mean, you don't need to be a data scientist to know that's not real traffic. He goes, okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right. Then he comes back to me about a week later and he says, all right, I got these 2 sources of traffic, make me a lot of money. I haven't had any client complaints yet, but you're catching just over 20% fraud on these accounts. Can you prove to me that they're fraud? So I looked at the basic data. There was nothing there. So I went to my chief product officer and said, what do you see here? And he says, this is one of those new sophisticated attacks. Tell him, and he can look at the data to see this. It's all Android traffic. But why we're catching it is all those Androids are being remote controlled by a single MacBook Pro. And when I told the client that, he turned around and says, okay, send me the paperwork. So that's what I live for. That's what to get those people to understand, like, our data, because in my industry, there's probably 100 different companies out in the marketplace, all right, that sell some type of fraud detection solution. And there's an industry standard set by the IAB, which is the Internet Advertising Bureau, which was built by the 4As. And I'm drawing a blank on the other organizations. A couple of organizations got together with the IAB, built a set of standards, says, if you're going to be a fraud detection solution, this is the bare minimums of what you need to do. I'll give you an example. One of the minimums is we need to block a certain level of IP addresses. And right now, their list is about 50 million IP addresses that you're supposed to be blocking. Our solution is blocking over 700 million, just to give you an example of how far above and beyond we go. Right. So, and then you could pay a company to certify that you're following those standards. And that's just the way it goes. There's 2 organizations that do that. And there's only 6 of us that are certified to follow those standards. So we always tell people, look, if you don't go with us, at least, at minimum, pick a solution that is certified by, to follow industry standards. Otherwise, you don't know what you're getting.
Right. So, I mean, it sounds like this is a very scalable product, and 2, that business is good.
Yeah. Business is good, and it's easily scalable.
What's the exit?
Down the road? I don't know.
Call
like
back
I said,
Google and Facebook, and
I'm getting towards that age where, okay, I've been in the space since 93. So I've been in this space for 32 years, 33 years, something like that. I have 3 grandchildren. I love, I have some other activities and some other business ideas I'd like to do. So sooner than later, eventually there'll be some type of exit where it makes sense. But right now it's just in the weeds, doing the thing, bringing on new clients, doing trade shows. Like this year, we'll do 18 trade shows. I mean, we're busy. We're at a lot of trade shows, trying new processes, implementing more and more AI tools within our tech stack. And I'm a technology junkie, so I love that kind of work. So I enjoy coming to work every day. So not looking for an exit anytime soon.
So, hypothetically speaking, who are the people that would be interested in an acquisition like this?
My competitors, because we've got a better technology, right?
Okay.
And some of the competitors that I'm thinking of are like billion-dollar valuation companies, like big companies. So, buying us is like a rounding error for them. Not a big deal. There'd be companies that are building. I have somebody I spoke to who called me up and says, are you looking to? And I'm like, not yet. I'm like, what are you thinking of? Because I just, I had no clue like there would be a fit there. And he's like, well, we're in acquisition mode and we're building this new technology. And if we can bolt your technology onto it, it would make it really interesting in the industry. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Things like that, I think would make it a very interesting offer. Like I said, when the time's right, we'll run a full process again and figure out, who's in the marketplace, who's looking for this kind of technology, and figure out who's willing to pay the most.
Yep. And who won't let it die?
Yeah. That's the other thing too. I don't want to sell it to have it dismantled. Like I have a competitor buy it just to shut it down. One of my competitors, we keep winning against them, and he's like, they're so small in comparison to they're $1 billion valuation, right? And he goes, these guys keep swinging up and winning the business. How the hell are they doing it? We got a better technology.
We're just better.
And that's what the clients will tell them.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as you kind of survey the landscape, so let's say, you're talking to, me, mid-40s guy, looking at starting something in SaaS. Where do I start?
Well, first you got to build something unique.
Correct.
Right. And get it up and running as far as making sure it doesn't have to be perfect, because if you wait for perfection, you'll never launch. Right. What was it? Windows proved that point years ago. Betamax proved that point years ago. A lot of years ago. But it's the first one to market. If you have a unique idea, it's the first one to market that usually wins, right? Crypto. Bitcoin's been the first one to the market. Guess what? They're still the leader in the space. No matter how many coins come out after that, they're still the leader in the space. I don't care who you talk to. If they're like, oh, Ethereum or this, that, no, it doesn't matter. It's the first one to the market is the one that wins. So you got to come up with an idea that's unique, that makes sense, that works. And again, in business, you don't have to be unique. You just have to be different. So you build your differentiator. They tell everybody,
or at least perceived to be different.
right? So the things you got to look for is when you're doing your pitch, right? Because you're going to be obviously selling the product eventually at one point, or marketing the product. What are the three things that separate you from the competitors? And they got to be solid items. And you might have a lot of different things. Like when people say what makes us different than this competitor, that competitor, I'm like, oh my God, I got lists of things, but three things that set us apart. And I give the three most important things that I think are most important so that they understand it in simple terms that these are the three things that set us apart. And then it depends on if you're going to raise funds to go get, marketing dollars, because again, you got to market it, whether it's through content marketing, paid ads, social. I mean, you got to find a way to get the word out and get it out there. Some people are good with influencer advertising. Some people are good with making viral videos. There's so many different ways to market it, but you just got to find a way that works for your product. The best way to describe it is to be where your clients are. It was always the advertising. Even when I was selling against Yellow Pages, I was selling, internet advertising against Yellow Pages. It's like, well, I was a quick story because I love stories, right? I was talking to a customer. He was 65 years old, the guy, and he ran a mobility company where they built the chairs that went up the stairs.
Okay.
For older people, right? And so he's got the older demographic where the Yellow Pages is going to be something that they generally use on a regular basis. So, and he's like, why should I be advertising on the internet? Like, my crowd. I'm like, your crowd is your age. He goes, yeah. I go, okay, great. Let's say something in this building breaks right now, right? And you need to look up somebody that you don't have a contact for, like a plumber or an electrician or something unique that needs to be fixed. How you can look up the number? And he knows I'm setting him up. And he goes, well, the Yellow Pages. Okay, bring out the Yellow Pages. He goes, I don't know where it is. I go, you're going to jump on Google, you're going to type in plumber, and you're going to find one online, right? And he goes, yeah. I go, that's what we're here about. Because we were early on trying to sell people to spend money on Google, because we were representing Google traffic at one point as one of our product lines. So we were trying to show them that, you got to be where your clients are. Your generation is now using the computer to search out for things instead of the Yellow Pages.
You may still type with two fingers like this,
But
but
you're on that now. Today's day, that age group. I mean, my mother-in-law, she's 84. She just turned 84 years old. She's on that phone all day long.
oh
You
yeah,
know, she don't use Yellow Pages or anything, and she gets most of her content. She watches TV for the news, but everything else she gets, her games, her interactivity, it's from that phone. It's
yep.
super easy to use. Jobs, when he built the iPhone, made it super easy to use that everybody's adopting it and everybody can use it.
They've made it almost an extension of our body.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's say, so this was a thing I did with my kids as they were going on. I said, okay, I'll get you a phone. I'll pay for the phone and I'll pay for the plan as long as you keep me and mom on Find Friends. Because the second I ever look up Find Friends and you're not connected, I stop paying for your phone and your phone
Yep.
is shut off. And then you have to go out and get a separate plan and do it. So they all need to leave it on. The genius in that is they don't go anywhere without that phone. So we'll Find Friends anytime they're doing something they're not supposed to. We can track exactly where they are. And we gave them the same ability. You can track where we are. So this way it's a two-way street. Even though I'm paying for it, you can still track where I'm at. So if you want to know when mom and dad are coming home, you could track us in the car, driving on our way home.
Yep. We're still at the restaurant. We're doing this.
Yeah. So it's just part of the thing, but everybody does it.
Heck of a story. Heck of a journey. I mean, it's been a lot of fun, it seems like.
I've enjoyed, like I said, I've had friends of mine that have built business. I have a cousin of mine, built a business in cybersecurity, and this thing just took off like a bat out of hell. Like landed some massive clients, and he's at a stage now where he works a couple hours a month and the thing's just cranking money. And it's just, I have people that I know that have been way more successful than I also know a lot of people who have failed at, every business they tried. They had good ideas, bad
Yep.
execution, failed. So like I said, I can't complain about, my position in life. I've had a lot of fun along the way. I travel a lot and I just, try to have fun wherever I am. Like life is short. I have 4 kids. 2 of them work for me. The other 2, my wife fired. So it gets, again, you got to have fun in life and you got to know,
Absolutely.
your kids.
And find the humor in everything. So, we usually end every episode by giving, our guests a few minutes to leave a message to our listeners, whether that's, to promote Anura, leave a message to our listeners about something you care about. Floor is yours. Give us a little bit more of what Rich Kahn has to offer.
So my marketing teams told me I got to do more bottom of funnel kind of stuff, right? So I got to
Okay.
talk about the business as much. And usually when I do these podcasts, I try to talk about all kinds of stuff that I think, depending on the audience, might be interesting, like business, growth, starting new companies, kids, different things that appeal to everybody, because you want people, have fun listening to a podcast. You don't want to be, I don't want to do a sales pitch. But at the end of this, typically what I like to tell people is, look, we mentioned this somewhere between 160 and 170 billion dollars being lost to fraud on paid advertising. It's no longer a question of if you have fraud, it's a question of how much fraud you
How
have.
much?
So the first thing I tell everybody to do, don't try to solve this on your own. It's too complex of a problem. You don't have enough data, the experience, and the financial capacity to absorb that. It's very inexpensive. In fact, like I said, we do a traffic quality audit just to do it for free, just to see if you have a problem we can solve. If you have a problem and it's a problem that we can solve, then we could talk about potentially working together. And like I said, spending a fraction of the cost of what it would cost to build it yourself. But I tell everybody, if you're not sure, you're spending money on digital marketing, go to Anura.io, click on the link to talk to an expert and let them set up a traffic quality audit for you. It's a no-brainer. It really is.
It is. I mean, regardless of how much traffic you have.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I'm sure I don't get a ton of traffic on my sites because they're niche, right? I'd probably love to look at the restaurant website and see what kind of traffic that's coming through.
It's all
But
good.
yeah, all right. So how can our listeners find out more about Anura?
So Anura.io, easy to find, Anura.io. We own the .com too, but we started with .io. We figured all SEOs on .io. On that site, we have over 300 blogs. We have a couple dozen ebooks. We have the internet's only comprehensive guide on ad fraud. Get me on LinkedIn. I do have video content being posted 6 days a week with little snippets of just like Q&A, little snippets that come from podcasts like this, just so you understand what's going on. This way, if you're looking for educational material, it's tons there. It's free. It's top notch. And then if you're like I said, if you're interested to find more, then there's a quick button to click on. You talk to one of our fraud experts. Our salespeople have been with us for 5-6 years, so they know the space well. They know the lingo. They know what kind of problems. As soon as you tell them what industry you're in, they already know what kind of problem you're probably having. So again, it's just educate yourself first on the space, and when you're ready, have us do the traffic quality audit so you can see exactly what you're dealing with.
All right. Well, as you know, my name is Derek DeLomo. I'm the owner of both Tremonti Financial Consultants and Tremonti Tax Solutions, together referred to as Tremonti. Tremonti bridges the gap between financial advisors and accountants by serving as CFO to our clients. We specifically love to work with business owners to develop a proactive tax strategy that maximizes after-tax profits. It's our job to help you earn more, be more efficient, and pay as little in taxes as legally possible. If this idea piques your interest, please go to TremontiTax.com and click on the Schedule Now button to book a 15-minute chat with me. Whether we end up working together or not, I'd love to hear from you. With all that said, Rich, it was really good talking to you today. Thanks for being here.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.